Today's theme is global education, and our guest is Keila del Valle, a longtime collaborator with VIA International. And leading us in conversation with Keila today is our president and CEO, Elisa Sabatini. Elisa?
Good afternoon to everyone. I am particularly delighted today to have our guest, Keila del Valle from Guatemala. Some of you know that I worked for many years in Guatemala and established quite a lot of relationships there back in the 80s, actually during the war. And, you know, fast forward being at VIA, we started sending volunteer and student groups of interest to Guatemala in 2006 was our first initiative. But since that time, and for now the past 8 years, we've worked with Keila del Valle. So I thought I wanted to start off a bit with her sharing with you a little, you know, personal information about herself and, you know, what she's all about there in the hills around Guatemala City. So Keila, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be able to share with you during this time. Buen provecho, I mean it. In Guatemala means que tengan un buen provecho, means good food for you. This is the time. So, well, thank you very much. I was born in Guatemala City, actually, but many years ago, we decided not to live in the noisy city anymore. Now we live in a small town called San Bartolomé, Milpas Altas, which is only 25 minutes far from the city and 25 minutes far from Antigua. So we are in the middle. We are right in the center of our interest. My husband works at the international airport since 3 years ago. He is a manager of maintenance there. I have 2 kids. My oldest daughter is 19 years old and is in her 2nd year of law school in Antigua. My son is 70 years old and he is in his last year of high school. In the future, he wants to be a chef, especially in cakes and dessert food, unfortunately. I've been working for VIA 10 years ago, including these pandemic years. Also, I'm a professor at the university. I teach in the law school and in the criminal law, in the criminal justice school too. Actually, I have a degree in criminal justice. I always joke with the students and my kids, and I say that I work in the communities and in solidarity projects during the day, and during the night, I'm in the other side. It's my dark side. In this pandemic, we decided to open our own small business with my family. One is a shop of school and office supplies, and the other is the chicken distribution. We only have 6 months with this experience. We are located in Antigua, and it's a really good idea to have something extra to increase the economy in Guatemala. But at the end, I love teach, I love education, development, support who more need, make business, and I really feel so blessed because I can work in the things that I love. Teach at the university, support the economy in my family, and work for VIA to support my country, and especially changing lives. This is a small things about my family and I.
No, thank you for that. So when you started working for VIA, I mean, tell us a little bit about what that focus is. What are we doing in the communities in Guatemala?
Okay, actually, I was thinking yesterday when we were talking that I started accidentally in this program. I started working in SHARE, that was an NGO, big NGO here in Guatemala. I was a reception secretary, actually. One day, they asked me if I want to cover my colleague who was going to have her baby for a month. She had a volunteer program at that time. I said, if you explain to me how to do it, of course I would. And this month became years. I fell in love with this program. Many of us want to support less fortunate people, but we don't know exactly how to do it. I thought in that moment, this is my opportunity. Then the program was canceled. And then VIA gave me the opportunity to start working with them together in an independent way. They believe in my passion and the knowledge of my country. It has now been 10 years ago. But our focus is supporting schools in education area, paint the schools, make workshops, because in the rural areas here in Guatemala, the education is not a priority. If the kids can read and write, the parents think that is enough. They can work for helping the economy of their families. So they will quit the school. I think that we made changes over these years after our visit with the groups. We finished, and the kids and the communities want to finish the high school no matter what after our visit, even go to university. But we have to do a lot more. That's the real. Mm-hmm.
And I think you were speaking with me recently about how much we've really accomplished in the years that you've worked for us. And you were talking about, I was surprised. You said we've been with how many schools we've worked with?
Yeah. I was telling you yesterday, actually, that I found some documents and I saw that we impact with this program around 60 communities. It's a lot of communities, but we have 1,000 communities. But we discovered that schools being visited by foreign students made them visible to the rest of the communities, and especially to the local governments. So we were able to prove that we were able to stop school dropouts. At this time of raising awareness, if they had a beautiful school, it motivated them to continue attending. It's incredible. But the colors were pleasant to their environment, and we were able to help them to understand the importance of the education, right? In our case with the groups, the parents always were involved and interested in collaborating with us in different ways. We visit their houses and being part of their families in those days. So it was a great time.
And can you tell us a little bit about the different, I mean, who are the different groups that have come to Guatemala? I know you've hosted a lot of groups.
Yeah, I have some names, but maybe you can tell me some of them. I remember that we have SDSU, a lot of students of SDSU, Fordham, Arizona, Manhattan, St. Joseph, Notre Dame, and SDU, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know that at the end of the program, we shared a lot of experience with the students in the communities. We made a big connection with them. We know that we changed life. I don't know if I tell you yesterday, but the students, we changed life of the students in the communities. Also me and our team, we discovered that this experience is not about money, it's not about investment, it's not about material stuff, it's not about time, it's not about languages, it's only experience of life. So we need to continue with this, changing lives. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that one of the things that's on the forefront of a lot of people's minds is what has happened in communities with the pandemic, with COVID. And I know that Guatemala has been hit quite hard in the rural areas where we had been working. And I thought if you could just share, I think with the folks here would be really interested to hear about sort of what's happening and what happened at the beginning and then what's happening now in Guatemala with regard to the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I know that the pandemic is difficult in everywhere, but here is really difficult, and especially in the rural areas. There is not employment, not opportunities. In the communities, the situation is worse. There is not employment, no food, no basic necessities for survival. In the case of the public schools, there is no internet connection. There are no computers in the houses. It's not a priority. The government closed the one-side classes, and what most worried the families was the breakfast that were given to the children. At least the only one full time at the day. The classes and homework were sent by WhatsApp. The parents had to invest in data to deliver them, and a week later, they had to send them by photo in the same way. The situation is terrible in the communities. The government activated the national channels for the children to receive the classes 2 days a week per level. It doesn't work either, because I think what happened with the communities without light, for example, they can't study. Some teachers who have the vocation were going to hand in the homework once in a week to the schools and pick it up the following week. But it's not the majority, unfortunately. For now, right now, the government opened again the public schools, face-to-face classes, but they resume for 2 days a week per level. Everyone is exposed, but we don't have any option. In the case of the parents, some of them are working in their land, but the offer and the demand is not enough. It's a chain, affect to everyone. Well, I think that we have I was telling you yesterday that we have one good thing in Guatemala, that the people start with, I don't know exactly how to say emprendimiento.
They're entrepreneurial.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how to pronounce that. But like preparing food, cakes, chocolates, pops, jellies, paints, sailing clothes, etc. And we discover our own talents. So we try to help each other for survive, because it's weird, but our government doesn't have any kind of program to help us. No credits, not funds for nothing, only, unfortunately, for corruption. That's the truth. The good thing is that we are free for sale, whatever we want and whatever we have in our hands. So that's the way that we survive. Here in the city, can you imagine outside? Can you imagine in the rural areas? It's really, really difficult.
Yeah. I know you were describing to me the streets and and how the people that didn't have food, like, yeah, it's kind of known that how people that are lacking food.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the people walking around the streets, in all the streets or principal streets in Guatemala City, and they just put a bandera,
Flag,
a white flag, and it means that they don't have any kind of food to survive. So we can help them with, I don't know, with money, but they prefer food. And most of them have their small kids and babies in their hands. So it's difficult. Here around my house, for example, the houses have a lot of flags. So, but at the beginning of the pandemic, you only have some schedule. So you have hours for buy, and you just can buy like 2 pounds of rice or 2 pounds of beans. So you can't help these people because you don't have enough food for you. So it was a terrible situation at the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah, and right now is the economy, because in general, the government doesn't have enough money, and the companies were closed, and everyone is like fighting with the economy. And in the land, if you are like an agriculture, you have your fruits or vegetable or whatever, but the people doesn't have enough money. So you have to, bargain and so it's very difficult, the situation. And the education is not functional.
So they will probably lose 2 years of school. The children,
Yes.
more or less 2 years of school.
Yes. You know, and even I'm a teacher at the university, and I said that even my students, I think that they need to study again these 2 years, because it's difficult to have them in front of a computer all the time, or maybe 8 hours one day in the week. So, but if you don't have a computer, if you don't have internet, if you don't have a cell phone, if you don't have access to anything, how you can teach? It's impossible.
Then you were saying the cafes are very expensive for a student to be.
Yeah. If they have to pay in a cafe internet, it's really expensive, and it's a lot of people there, so it's not safe to. So for the students, well, if they have maybe a one cell phone, you can send a message in WhatsApp with your homework, but it's really difficult and sad, especially.
Well, you probably, as we've talked, know that we are receiving a lot of people here at the border arriving from not only Guatemala, but certainly Guatemala is included in the folks that are coming up here. So I thought if you could describe to us a little bit about like what would be the environment in a pueblo or in an aldea, and this kind of pressure that is having people leave.
Well, I think that the answer, Elisa, and to all of you is like the same of the last one. If you don't have food, if you don't have access to educated, not employment, not opportunities, what do people think, right? In the city, for example, you can think to go and live in another country with your families, I don't know, around the world, maybe. But what the people in the communities think in American dream is cross the border, right? So in the communities, most of the communities have a coyote or a friend of coyote, right? But I can tell you about San Martin, for example, that San Martin is one of the communities that we visited with the groups. If you can see around this community that is really poor, poverty, they have a lot of poverty, and you can see a big house with good cars and good style of life. If you ask, everyone knows that is the coyote house. So they have the access to contact him easily. Sometimes the coyote is a friend of the community, is a friend of the family. So if you can talk with him, he can convince you. He always says that, well, you can give me your children. I can pass them to the US and they can find food, a good opportunity to support you and give you a better life to you and to your family. They are going to be sure and safe with me. That's the coyote says. The families here are desperate. That's the truth. So they coordinated with their families in US to receive the kids there. But I think that they never imagine what are going to happen with them in the way, during the way. Some of them are going to die, being raped, kidnapping by the criminals, and maybe never going to see them again. But if you are lucky, you are going to cross the border. Yesterday, I think in the morning, I was talking with a friend that is the dean of SDSU. She sent me a message and she told me that now she's working with these refugees. Are thousands of kids from Central America. And she received girls with only 13 years old pregnant. I just think this is really a high cost to American dream. And I think that the most common reason here in Guatemala is the poverty, is a bad economy and not opportunities. So that's the real life here. So the people are looking for new opportunities. And the coyote, of course, says that everything is easy.
Mhm.
But in the way, it's difficult. I think that this is the most reason of the kids. And of course, I don't know exactly what Biden says, but I know that he says that the kids are going to be treated like very human, right? I don't know.
Mhm.
So when the people hear that, they say, okay, we are going to send our kids. They are going to be better there or on the way than here. Without food, without opportunity, not education, not access to anything, right? So
And what was the cost? You said that the coyotes, you were saying, it's very expensive. It's not an easy, it's not that they're making a lot of money on doing this, of course.
I think that the cost is $10,000 per person. And of course they said, okay, no worries to pay me right now. I'm gonna pass the kids first and then but it's like a lot of money. If there's 2 or 3 kids, I don't know. And they have to pay it because they know where you live, how is your family.
Mhm.
And I always says that the coyotes are like criminals, you know, it's the truth. Yeah. So it's very, very expensive. And if you ask to the communities why you are going to pay that amount if you can work in Guatemala City or whatever, they say because I can sell my land,
Mhm.
or I'm going to give to the coyote my land.
Yeah.
So the coyote is the owner of a lot of pieces of land around the communities, right? So he never loses.
And of course, the people go into deep debt if they, and thinking that the money will come, I guess, from the remittances back from family members or, yeah.
Correct. And you know that if you think that the coyote have your kid, you are going to find the way to send money to a coyote.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really sad, it's difficult, but it's the truth. As I told you yesterday, the violence here is the same that a few years ago. So it's not increase or decrease, it's the same. But the economy is really hard and it's difficult. Because I think that the government, especially this government, well, all the governments, but this it's a bad government in general. But well, is that we have, so we need to survive like in different ways.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that maybe we could have an opportunity to, I know we have I think at least a question over here in the chat to speak to. And it happens to be from your friend Gabriel, who's on here.
Oh,
Really? So, he says, you always have had such a unique perspective on community development in Guatemala, and your ability to build lasting connections and friendships with community is a big part of the success of the VIA programs. So his question is, what is it that makes your process of building the relationships so successful?
Hi, Gabriel, I miss you. Well, you know, that I think maybe is the empathy. I just try to be in the same place that these people are. I know that it's difficult because we have to work too much for have small things, right? Mm-hmm. If you see, I have to work in the university. I work for VIA. I have a small business. So I have a lot of different things for increase the economy. So I think with one job, we can't survive. We can't. So I think that is the empathy. I try to, to build a really good relation with these people, because I know that it's hard for them, for the kids, and it's part of my culture. I love my culture. I love my country. I always says that Guatemala is a beautiful, beautiful place. We have a lot of things to discover. We have different weathers in the same place. If you want to go to the hot, you just have to drive 2 hours. And if you want to go to other weather, you just have to drive another 2 hours. So we have everything. We have a nature, we have a good food, everything. But unfortunately, we have these people that needs a lot. So I think that the empathy is the answer.
I thought maybe you could also tell us a little bit about the team that we've worked with there, because I think we have some wonderful people.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, we have a wonderful team here that always is ready for help each other. And all of us have the same feeling about this program. So we love what we do. We have Pedro Mutsus, is community server. Facilitador is the name. He can speak Cachiquel. He's a teacher. So he teaches at school, and he lives in San Martin. So he can communicate first with the communities in their own languages. So that's very interesting, because they open their hearts when someone speaks their own language. That is difficult, right? So they can speak Cachiquel and Espanol, right? But if I just get into a community and just start speaking in Spanish, they're just going to see me like, that's good. But they never answer anything, right? But if Pedro go and speak in Cachiquel, they open and they said, okay, welcome to our community, right? So Pedro is a great part of the team. He's been working with me and with Via for a long time too. He loves what he do. And then we have our guide tourism, right? They are in charge of guide all the group in tourism areas, and especially to be translator. We have now just Jose Emilio. I've been saying Chinito. But he's in charge of the group, and he's a young man. He's very enthusiastic, and he loves what he do too. So we have a good Pedro, good tour guide. We have a good drivers too. So we have a great team here, and we love what we do. So it's part of our big team, just like 4 or 5.
Well, and one thing I thought, for those that may know or may not know about Guatemala, Guatemala has 23, I believe, indigenous languages, which are different languages. So one of those, the community that we work in, is in the department of Chimaltenango, which is primarily Cachiquel speaking. And
Right.
that area of the country was heavily affected by the Civil War. And for that reason, there were, people on opposite sides that were in the same families at times. And so a real divisive result from, and quite a lot of really carnage from the Civil War in that area. So another aspect of, and Keila mentioned it, but another aspect of visiting there is that it does help the healing of these communities. We generally have on the visits testimonials from people about the war, about their experience of all that. And I remember clearly a man saying at one point, we don't want to forget, because we don't want this to ever happen again. So, so these communities already fraught with poverty and already fraught with, if you just think about us here, I mean, a dual language community from the start. It's not like everybody speaks Spanish and, oh, you get to learn Cachiquel. It's more like everybody speaks Cachiquel and they are told to speak Spanish. So, you know, they already have some sort of difficulties entering into the marketplace, and as it is. And then now with COVID, I think I just sort of picture those villages that I know, and I'm quite clear they don't have internet, and I'm quite clear they don't have, you know, any way to make the educational aspect of the last year, you know, happen. So I mean, I think that just to have framed a little bit about Guatemala, one of the things that I have only just mentioned, but I think we need to put a pin on the map, is that we believe that there will be, in the good hope that we're moving away from this pandemia, that we'll be opening up our possibilities of travel in this coming year. And so John and I have been talking now for well over a year about the possibility of a journey that would include Guatemala, that we believe we'll be calling this the Ruta Migrante, or the migrant route. And we are hoping that there will be interest from maybe many of those on this call to join us. And I think the pin we're putting in it is January 2022. So we don't have exact dates yet, but Keila's already on board to help coordinate the Guatemala component. And then the idea is that we would also include Mexico City, Central Mexico, and then end our journey in Tijuana. So I thought maybe John could share a little more about.
Sure, just ask people to let us know if you're interested to explore the possibility. And clearly we sign people up well before January and have some kind of policy in place where if we had to delay, a deposit, of course, would still be in place for a future trip. So just reach out to me and Elisa if you'd like to learn more about our plans for that trip. I'm looking forward to it because I had intended to do that soon after starting at VIA last year, and those plans, of course, quickly were suspended. So, and I haven't been to Central America since I spent a year in Costa Rica in 1991. So it's been 30 years since I've been to Central America. So I'm very much excited to get to go back. I hope many of you will join us. I also wanted to squeeze in a little further conversation if I can. Keila, I'm curious to know about your perspective on the legal system in Guatemala. And of course, you know, we hear here in the United States, the stories of people, you know, having suffered greatly in the hands of criminal organizations, traffickers, as you mentioned. And then we hear about at least the pretense from the United States government of trying to support the building of institutions, including legal institutions in Guatemala. What's the jurisprudence and the legal system and criminal justice system like in Guatemala these days?
Well, we always have the support of the government of US. That's true. We also have a special group of people that came here for looking to destroy the corruption in the government. Was great at the beginning, was great, and we start to believe in that, and work very good, but unfortunately the government says, okay, now it's gonna finish. So they said goodbye to this program here, and never happened again. So, because of course they don't want to have people looking the corruptor, right? So we have the thing here is the criminals are ready to start every day with the new things, and we just keep the old laws, right? So we need to be in the same boat, right? If we have like criminals, we don't have a lot. Well, we have in some departments, we say department or states, if you want to say the states, that have a lot of drug dealers. It's like Caban, it's like Chimaltenango, and they are the owner of that state, right? So if you want to get in, you need a permission, so you need to be supervised by the criminals. But the government can't do anything, unfortunately. In the city, we have like a normal violence, like I said normal because it's normal for me, right? But we have like regular violence. But here, they can kill you for your phone. They can kill you for your computer. So here, the life is nothing for the criminal because the law is not functional.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to protect by our own. So we have to know exactly where we can go and we can't go, right? Even in Antigua. In Antigua, you can go, you can be walking around, but you need to have precaution for everything, right? But the thing is that the law is stopped. The law is like, you know, in the gaveta, you know, is guardada. And that's why we have this kind of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the government, we need to prepare the government. We need to be, I always say that I admire US because you can prevent. You can prevent everything. So you prevent a catastrophe, but we are not ready for any catastrophe, right?
Yes.
You know, we have like action society and not prevent society.
Yeah. Yes,
So
we have our own forms of unpredictable violence, of course, with handguns and mass shootings and so forth. So there's always, of course, risks and different kinds of vulnerabilities. But yeah, my experience in Mexico and elsewhere, as I'm sure yours is that the knowledge of the local landscape and the knowledge of, as you're saying, what precautions and where to travel with whom and is of course essential. Tell me more about a question in the chat room was on my mind as well about how people in Guatemala are reacting to the new presidential administration here in the United States. And specifically, are people in Guatemala reading about changes that President Biden may be talking about, or how are perceptions of we call it the MPP program, Migration Protection Protocol, or Remain in Mexico? And how is word spreading around Guatemala? What kind of talk is in Guatemala about changes in US policy?
Well, we celebrate it, actually. We celebrate Biden because no one wants Trump. That's the truth, even here.
Lógico.
Lógico. But we celebrate, and well, I think that the people knows a few things, but we don't know too much because the government is not interested that we know exactly what the politics of US. But I think that the people have a hope in Biden, the new politics and the politics of migrations. But I think that, I don't know if he need to be very specific or more specific in their new politics. Because if he just said, we are going to open the border, what means for me or what means for my migrants means, okay, we can get to the US, you know? And that's why that's happened. So I think that he needs to be more specific, and he says, okay, we are going to, I don't know, maybe we are going to receive kids, but it doesn't mean that you have to send your kids. You know what I mean? So I think that we need to be clear and and have the clear what kind of politics he wants to give us or give to the migrants, and letting know the people, right?
Mhm.
I think,
Can I ask also about the province of Chimaltenango? Is Chimaltenango, ¿verdad?
Mhm.
Is there, where do many people in Chimaltenango, I'm sure, would of course have relatives here in the United States. Are there particular cities or places in the United States where people from the communities that you work with, where they have, when they think of some place in the United States, what kind of places are they thinking of? Do they have cities in mind or states in mind?
well, it depends if they have families in US. If
Yes.
they have some families in US, they always move with them.
Yes.
So I hear like, of course, Arizona.
Mhm.
I think LA,
Mhm.
and I don't know, and maybe I don't know if New Hampshire or something like that.
New Jersey, probably, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 But they always send the people with their families where they live. Mhm.
Yes, a fellow here in San Diego has studied these patterns, which, as you say, of course, logically follow like trees, relationships, but also sometimes are to very specific neighborhoods, even, very specific parts of Los Angeles, for instance, related to very specific communities in Guatemala. But
Yeah.
yeah. And what about is that for a young person coming of age in Guatemala? You mentioned your work in schools. And so if I'm 16 and I have gotten some education and I'm a young man, 16, 17, what kind of options are available to me as I think about my future if I'm there in Guatemala?
Well, you know that when we have the chance to spoke with some students in the communities, I think that if they found an opportunity here, maybe they can change their mind. If they have the opportunity, because here you have in a community you have like primary school, right? And if you want to go to high school, you have to move to the central city. Then maybe it's around 2 hours or 45 minutes. So you have to drive, well, not drive, walk, or take a bus or go with your parents. So that's why the parent says, okay, you just need to know how to write and how to learn and how to write and read. That's the only thing that you need for work, because you are going to work in my land, for example. But when they have the opportunity to move close to the high school, they can start change the perspective. And if they have the opportunity to go to university, it's better. So I think that we can stop this migration if they have the same opportunities.
Yeah.
I always say the same. I have some students that came from very poverty communities in the university, and I feel like with a lot of commitment, with this kind of students, because I know that maybe they are going to be the example of their community for internet, and they can pay for a private school or private university. So I think that they make a great effort to be different in their community. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes. Yes, your picture is frozen for me. Is it frozen for you, Elisa?
Yes, I think if you click it off and on, Keila, it will work.
But we are hearing you, Keila.
We can hear you.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
we can hear
Yeah.
you. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that oops, did she
Oops.
she may have left. She'll come back. Well, Elisa, or let me just open it up to others in the Zoom room as well. I think Keila will probably come back, but
Yeah,
questions?
Okay.
there she
There
is.
it is.
Sorry.
No,
I'm here.
glad you're here.
Yeah,
Other questions that anyone from the Zoom room would like to lift up? Let's open it up and include others in the conversation. Anybody would like to ask a question of Keila?
We hope that some of you will be inspired to consider, as we open up travel, a journey to Guatemala. It's a pretty magical place.
Mhm.
I might even see if I can get Phil to say a few words about his journey there.
I'm curious to know, maybe I could just ask a show of hands, those of you, how many of you have been to Guatemala in the room? I see Joanna and Will and Phil, Tom, a good number, yeah. Yeah. And how about others of you to other parts of Central America? A little bit, yeah, several others, Doretta, yeah. Yeah, that I'm very much looking forward to it, as I mentioned. So please do, open that conversation with us. What questions do you have for Keila? Others?
I would like Phil to mention about his journey to Guatemala because it seemed to have a big impact on him.
I spent a lot of time in Mexico and visited Ecuador and Costa Rica and all. We had a board of directors trip to Guatemala in, I think it was the summer of 2010 or 11. I forget. It's years ago now.
Mhm.
But it was magical. That is the experience we had in the villages and with the people. And it was so interesting. We were helping paint a school, but all the parents were helping paint too. But then we would have a session with children and the kids, and they would put on a Mayan play of myths with incense and things. That was magical. And then there'd be a serious discussion about the Civil War, about the bodies that they buried in that village. And it was very moving, but it's hard to imagine such a beautiful place where people are hungry. It looks so lush, and one would think that the crops are be so plentiful and everything. And it is spectacular, the geography. And the people are very, very kind. And they're very short. But anyway, I'm hoping, I'll certainly hope to go again next January when we go. And I would encourage you. It is very different from any of the other Spanish-speaking countries that I've visited. It was wonderful.
Keila, say a little bit of word about hunger, and Phil suggested this, the why of hunger. I remember visiting in Panama. This was in that year 1991 that I spent in, and I learned that I can't remember the name of the people, it might be the Guayni in Panama. In the native language, they had a name in that language. There were two names for the seasons of the year. And one was the season of rain, and the other was the season of hunger.
Mm.
And this is a language that had evolved across, 1,000 years and more. But tell us, what are some of the dynamics that lead to extreme hunger in Guatemala?
I don't know what hunger means. Can you tell me?
Hunger, hambre.
Hambre.
Ah, hambre. Well, you know that here we have different customs for it. So we have the breakfast, and some of the time in the communities, especially, they have the breakfast at school, right? But maybe it's gonna be the only good food that they will have during the day, because the dad have to go and work all the day, and maybe he's going back in the night with some money, and the wife has to cook maybe beans if they have money for beans, or just gonna be tortillas. Here we live with a lot of tortillas, eating a lot of tortillas that actually are delicious, but maybe they're gonna have just 4 tortillas for lunch. So we have a lot of hunger here because they don't have the possibility to go and buy to the supermarket food. Only if they plant their own land, maybe some vegetables or some fruits, but not all the seasons.
And this is, as I understand some of that history, the concentration of land ownership in the hands of very few Again, I heard Phil allude to this kind of irony or paradox that you see lush, a very rich land, but also people hungry. But if people don't have access to land, of course, and or can't farm land productively, can't own livestock in particular, then hunger is, a persistent threat. Is the land? Is it easy to acquire land in Guatemala? If somebody from Chimaltenango wanted to establish a family farm or a community farm and live what might be called subsistence agriculture, is that an option? Is that a viable strategy? Again, thinking if I'm a 17-year-old Guatemalan, can I think, oh, I'll get a piece of land, I'll become a farmer, good to go?
Well, it's not easy, like you said, because some of the lands, it's part of the herencia, right? So the grandparents give to the son, and right. But if I want to buy a piece of land, it's really expensive, and you need to know exactly how the agriculture is, right? And you need to know where you are going to sell that.
Yeah.
So you need a strategy for this kind of market. So it's not easy. It's not easy. It's better if you can have your own land and you can maybe just planting for your own family.
Yeah.
Right? That's better.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I know that one time visiting one of the farms, and a woman that was, of course, raising and growing and harvesting her own corn. And I asked her what they ate, and she said, well, we eat tortillas. And I asked her what else, and she said, well, a little bit of chile. And she had a large family. I can't remember how many children, many children. And she said, oh yes, we eat 70 kilos of tortillas a week, which I just sort of think, well, you've got 9 or 10 children, and they're all mostly eating tortillas. That's, yeah.
And you know that you need to explain them or show them or educate them, because I remember that Share in that moment, this NGO, brought to these families chicken and hens and cows and a lot of, and what they did, they make a big party for all the family one Sunday, and they kill all the hens for celebrating, so they don't have the culture of this too. So you need to educate it first.
Yeah. I do know one economist calls it land, livestock, and markets. That you have to have access to land, you have to have access to livestock, and you have to have access to markets. Otherwise, land alone doesn't do you very much good. You get subject to seasons, to catastrophe, to famine, et cetera, so. Well, any other questions before we, yes, Carol, go ahead and unmute, and thanks for joining.
My question is, as one of the consequences of the migration, people will be losing their lands because the coyote will then become the landowner, which then could become an oligarch. And so the consequences of losing the land, not having any place to raise livestock, chickens, the corn, the chiles, the whatever, and usually beans underneath sometimes, that kind of farming. The consequences of the migration then could be much more everlasting, besides education, the fact that it affects education. And when it's very hard to educate kids that haven't eaten. That was my experience in East LA when I was teaching there. Until we really got an effective food program for the school, it was very hard to teach children that were hungry, and certainly not to test them, but to teach them at all. But if people lose their land in order to pay for the coyote to take their child, then you have someone who loses his land, loses his child, and any means for actually working the land, because if the children are gone, there's no one to work it. So, I mean, these are consequences of the migration that are tremendous.
Mhm. Well, and there's one more to mention, and that is climate change, which has changed a lot of the nature of production and everything, particularly in the Guatemalan highlands. So that's another aspect. I mean, just what you're saying is right on point, Carol. And
I think that's why the students want to back and the parents want that the kids back to school, because they are going to give the breakfast and the lunch.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that's good, and it's a good food. It's not bad. They only have to worry about the dinner, right?
mhm.
But if they don't receive classes, they don't have food. They don't have anything.
Mhm.
So they prefer to run this risk to lose everything and maybe have one opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, friends, thank you. Yeah, Carol, one final comment, and then we'll say thank you.
Last question. Is there any experience of the children actually coming back after they've made the migration, and also families that return in your experience? Because the migrations, this is the newest migration. I mean, we've had Los Angeles had a huge Guatemalan community.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if any of them return.
Well, I think that no, maybe they never return, but they send money. So the people here, you can see in the communities, and you can see the difference in the communities about the houses, the build of the houses. So you can see that they receive remesas, from the son or the kids or whatever that is in Estados Unidos. So you know the difference. You can see they have a good house, they have more food than the others, and they have another privileges than the others. So maybe they never return, but they help their families.
Friends, thanks so much. Yeah, it's time to close. I just want to give a shout out and give Rigo Reyes a chance to tell us about next week's guest, and then maybe we'll close with one final comment. We want to let Keila go on at the hour, but Rigo, can you share with us what's coming up next week?
Sure. Just for everybody's knowledge, I invited Nancy Maldonado. She's the executive director / president of the Chicano Federation, which has a long history of community involvement here throughout San Diego. So she's going to be our guest for next Tuesday. We're looking forward to having her here with us.
Great. And again, I think most of you I see in the room are getting the emails. If you know others, feel free to spread the word. Gabriel, did you want to share a final question or comment, and then we'll say farewell? But
oh well, this was just fantastic. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Yeah, it's just so good to see you. Like, I think it's we talk a lot about building long standing relationships with communities and people, and I think you're just one of the most extraordinary examples of that, at least in my time in VIA. We've all had different time periods. So I did want to say one comment to Carol's question, which I thought was interesting. Part of Keila's team is a man named Pedro. And what makes him so unique is he did this. He migrated to the US, he crossed the Texas border. He worked in spas and he worked his way up, and he managed a lot of things, and he learned how to navigate credit. And he shared some of these stories with me when I was there. And then, but he really wanted to come home. He wanted to go back to San Martin and work in his community. And so I think it's a really probably unique. I think Keila's answer was correct. Most, certainly maybe don't come back, but Pedro did. And he's a big part of her core that I think also makes it successful, and part of what provides that kind of empathy that she was sharing with us. So thank you, Keila, for continuing your work and for updating us on Guatemala. It's just lovely to see.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Our trips are wonderfully safe and wonderfully hosted. And those of you out there that are interested, think about January. It's going to be great.
Well, thanks.
We will be waiting for all of you.
Yes,
we have enough space.
We'll try to get some dates on the calendar sometime soon. So will you join me, everybody, in thanking Keila? Just a round of applause, un fuerte aplauso. Gracias, gracias, Keila, por participar con nosotros.
Gracias.
And we'll look forward to seeing you, we hope, very soon, and maybe even in person. And the rest of you, we'll look forward to seeing you next week, Tuesdays, 12 noon, here at Via Voices. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Saludos.
Gracias.